Hi guys, it's Kelly here and I'm back with another video. Today's video is featuring some products from My Favorite Things. This is the Heart Race stamp set, which I think is super cute. I bought this quite some time ago and then just never had a chance to use it. And then the other one that I am using is the Small Brick Wall Stencil. And we're going to be using that to create a scene card today. So I'm going to create my mask because this is a 1-layer card, but they do have companion dies. I just didn't purchase them. But if you choose to, then you certainly could skip this step and then just stamp or color her, die cutter out and put her in your scene. But we're going to be talking a lot about the background building for scene cards. Before we get too much further along in this, My Favorite Things is having a sale. It's a 10% off sale. And the really cool thing about this is it includes their brand new release. So their holiday release that just came out, I think like yesterday or the day before. So fall and like holiday, that's also included in the sale, which is something that you rarely see. Usually a new release is excluded. And that is going through September 16th. So I will link that below if you would like to head over and see what they have. Now, at this point, I have stamped my mask, I've stamped my girl, and then I'm putting my mask in place. I like Eclipse masking paper, and then I also use the Post-it note tape. Pretty much the way that I roll is for masking the images, I use the Eclipse. If I want a straight edge, I use the Post-it note tape. I am currently out of the Post-it note tape, so you'll see how I kind of get around that using the roll of Eclipse. I have some other masking products that I haven't tried yet that are in my stash. Here, what I'm doing with the pencil is I'm just kind of marking out where I need my masks to go. This is how I'm getting around that straight edge. I need a straight edge for the side of that building that we're going to create. And so I just unrolled a little bit extra, stuck it in my paper trimmer, cut off what I needed to, and now I have a straight edge to work with so that my building isn't wonky. I'm going to put that in place, and then this is going to be the area that I'm going to stencil. You could skip all of this and just mask off like the ground and not do anything on the side. But I wanted there to be a little bit of color differentiation in the background. I didn't want it to be just like this bland gray wall. You know what I'm saying? So that is why I chose to put in some sky and some grasses and some road. There is still a lot of gray in this card. I'm not going to pretend like there isn't. But at least I think it's a little bit broken up. So once I have my base layer down, which was very light, I'm using the hickory, is it hickory smoke? Yep, it is. I'm using the hickory smoke. I put down a very light layer so it wasn't just like on a bright white. And then I'm going to go back in with the same color. I'm just holding my stencil in place. I didn't have too many issues with it moving. And honestly, I didn't want to use my trick of the Tombow Model multi-glue because there's so many lines. Yep, I know. I just didn't want to spend the time to do it. I put that in, and then I just went right over with the same color. I'm going to talk a little bit how to add some dimension to that when we get to the coloring portion. But for now, I'm just flipping that straight edge to now mask the building and then put in just it's just a little sliver of blue sky and green grass as if she is driving by and passing this building. I lifted up a little bit on the bottom because I didn't want a straight edge for my sky. I wanted my grass to kind of go up into the sky. I wanted it to look natural, I guess. So I did peel that up just a smidge. And after I did my Salty Ocean, I'm just adding in a little bit of prize ribbon. This is, again, just a preference. I like my sky with a little color variation. I like everything with a little color variation, y'all. Who are we kidding? I like mixing color. I like mixing colors. It makes me happy. So now that my little sky portion is done, I'm going to rearrange my masks a little bit. So I'm just scooting this down so that I can have some grasses, almost like a tree lawn is what I'm trying to create. And then I'm going to leave the blue sky portion of it open so that the grass, like I said, blends up into the sky so that it looks different. So that it looks like there's not just this straight edge, but it looks more scene-like. So once I have the mowed lawn down, I'm just going to go in with just a little bit of rustic wilderness to add a little bit of dimension. She covers up the vast majority of my tree lawn, so it's really just adding a little bit of color to the left and the right is pretty much all it is. Once I'm done with that, then the ink blending portion is done. I'm going to go in and erase my lines and get into the coloring of it. So how are we going to add a little bit more dimension to this wall? Real simple, real simple. We're just going to add lines of color. And so if you have bricks that are kind of like sticking out from a wall, or the edge of the building, there's going to be a little bit of shading. And so I went in with my cool gray markers. You could use any grays that you have. You could use warm, you can use the neutral. I mean, literally any of them will work. And I'm just going to add just a little line of color underneath the bricks and around the corners. And I'm not even doing every brick, guys. I'm just doing some sporadic ones with the darker color. And then I'll do the same thing with the mid-tone. I will blend out my darker color and then add just a little line of shading to some of the other ones. And this is just going to help make the background look a little bit more dynamic. So it doesn't look just completely flat. The stencil gives us a really great base to work off of. And could you draw a brick background with, Copic markers? Yeah, you could for sure. Is this way easier? Yeah, it is. It's way easier. So I'm grateful for the stencils that are like this, and My Favorite Things has some really great ones. I chose to draw in my grasses, but they have a great grass edge stencil that I could have used that would work. And I love their clouds one. The clouds one I can never say enough good things about. Huge fan of that cloud edge stencil. But these just make it easier to make our scenes more interesting. Could I have just done a blue sky and some green grasses like she was passing that? For sure. You could do 100 million things. You could do a sunrise, a sunset. There's a whole, here I made a grave error. A grave error. It's very serious on my card. I went in with the darkest color when I thought that I was going in with the lightest color. Fortunately, I was able to kind of just go over that with the medium, like the mid-tone, the C3, and then the lighter color and blend it out, and it was fine. Here, I'm going to bring my stencil back in again because there's this portion in the center, and the die may cut this out. I'm not positive because, like I said, I don't own it, but I wasn't going to go in there. I'm not a lunatic, a little bit, not full on crazy. So I wasn't going to go in there and try to fussy cut around all of that jazz. I just masked it. And then I'm using my stencil as a guide to go in and put in the same kind of shading that I put in the background. I realized pretty quickly that the hickory smoke was a warmer gray than what I was using. So I just went in with a W3 and went over those bricks that I'm kind of drawing in, so that they would be the same tone as the ones in the background. And then I went back in and continued to add my shading. Using the stencil as a guide also helps you to make sure your things are still lined up and that it looks like it was meant to be there, like you actually put it in where it was supposed to go. Once that is done, I am going to work on the road. So there isn't any great big trick to it. I'm just giving her a lane and then a little bit of a lane closer to us. So that's why I guess that one's a little bit smaller, but I made it darker the further away it was. So I'm using my C5, and you could even go darker than this if you were going for blacktop. You could go darker than I did. I just went with the grays because I already had that kind of vibe going on with the brick wall. And so it seemed to make sense to me. Once I've got that blended out, I'm going to put in my yellow line. I could have done a double yellow. I didn't. I just did a single yellow. I figured I got my point across. And so I'm going to do that with my YO2 and then add in a little bit more brightness with a YO8. And then just smooth out the whole thing again with my YO2. and then I'm going to add in the rest of the gray. This time I flipped them. I put the lighter color on top, and then I'll add a little bit of shading to the bottom portion of it with the C5, just like one little line. You can tell I totally need to re-ink my marker. That C3 definitely needs a little love. I used to be way better about it. Now, not so much. Now I just kind of re-ink them as I need them, which maybe is not the way to be. So now my road is done. The majority of my background is done. The last thing that I'm going to do is put in some grasses. So I'm going to go in with these 3 green markers. These are the ones that I have found that are closest to that kind of mowed lawn. And it may seem silly to go in with the YG03 since you cannot see a lot of it, but it does add to the depth. And that's really what we're trying to create on this one layer card is some depth and dimension. And so having multiple colors here, a light, a medium, and a dark, does increase the depth perception that you have about these grasses that she's just driving by. So now, pretty much for me, the background is done, and we're going to start working on coloring her and her, what is this? A Vespa, I guess? Her little motorcycle, her little scooter. And I'm not going to talk so much about this because I'm going to talk about something else instead. So if you're not into story time, or it's not even really story time, it's something you guys asked for and I'm going to talk about it. This may be the point where you want to go ahead and mute your, or put on some music or fast forward, whatever you got to do. So one of the things that you guys had asked me about that you said that you would be interested in learning about was design teams. And I'm going to tell you, I strategically picked to talk about this when I was working on a card that used products from a company that I don't work for. Like, I don't. I have guest designed for them, but I have never been on a design team for them. And I strategically picked it that way because I don't want the things that I'm saying to be associated with any specific company. I have been very, very blessed to work with a multitude of companies, some that I really loved and some that I didn't love so much. And so we're going to talk about as much as I can fit in here. I feel like this is going to be more than a one-part series because there's just a lot of things to discuss. So the first things first is, how do design teams work? What is the function of them? And they work differently for different companies. So there are some companies that have a design team. They put out a design team call. You submit for them. There's a whole application process. You have to submit your work. You have to show, what kind of influence you have online. I shouldn't say influence because that makes it sound like you need to be prestigious, and you don't. It basically, how you're going to share their product is what they want to know. So do you have a blog? Do you have a YouTube? Do you have an Instagram? Do you have now a TikTok is a thing. And Twitter used to be a thing. But how are you going to share their product? That's what they want to know. And there's a whole process that you have to answer a bunch of questions. Some of them are like, hey, just send us some pictures of your work. And that's the application process. And then from the applications that they receive, they select their design team. I have applied for, and it's been a long time since I have applied for a design team that way, but I have in the past, and it was very much early on in my card making career. One of them turned me down, was the first one that I ever applied to, and they were like, no, thank you. And I appreciate that because my style isn't for everybody, and I understand that. And so please know when you are applying for a design team, it may not be like that they think that your stuff isn't good or it isn't good enough. It may just not suit their needs at the time. And so like one of the design teams that I applied for, I really loved their stuff. They had like snarky sentiments that I thought were really fun and kind of playful. But in hindsight, I could see how they were not my style. They had almost no images, which is crazy because I'm a colorist. So why would I apply for a design team that I'm not going to be able to best showcase their products, and they aren't going to have products that best showcase my skills? It wasn't a good fit. And I wasn't thinking about that at the time. I was just thinking that I really liked their products. And And it didn't keep me from buying their products by any means, because I still really liked them, but I can see it wasn't a good fit. Another one that I applied to that way, they did. They were like, yes, we'd love to have you. And that one had tons of images and tons of florals. And it was a stamp company that I genuinely loved, and I used all their products anyway. And that would be my number one tip, which we'll come back about how to get to on design teams. I don't know if we'll touch on that today, but that would be my number one thing is you have to be applying for a company that you love the product. You cannot just be randomly applying to design teams. You have to love it, because that's when you're going to do your very best work, is when you genuinely enjoy the products that you're using, and it's something that you would pay your own money for. So there's that whole process. There's other design teams that they don't have a call to action like that. They just have where they reach out to people specifically to ask them if they would like to join. That has happened to me as well, where I've had people reach out to me and, hey, we'd really love to have you join our team, if you would be interested. And then you kind of go from there and see whether or not it's a good fit for you. That also is fairly commonplace in our industry nowadays. And I understand that limits who gets in quote unquote invited. And so it doesn't really give you a lot of room to, what's the word that I want? To try to achieve that goal. It doesn't give you a lot of ways to try to achieve that goal. I do have some suggestions. Again, we'll talk about that when we talk about getting on design teams. So once you're on the design team, okay, let's talk about that. Once you are there, there's different things that are expected from you from different companies. Oh, I forgot to talk about the third one. The third one is no design team at all. The third one is no design team at all, and they rock just guest designers. And there's a lot of companies that do this as well, where they have guest designers that they reach out to, send product to, and they don't house a design team at all. So there's no compensation that they're asking, like there's no compensation or expectation of compensation, because they're not even asking you to do anything. They're merely sending you the product and seeing if you would be interested in using it. Then once you make a commitment to them, like, yes, I'd love to use this product, please send it to me. Then, there's different ways that you can be compensated or not. But some design teams don't carry a design team at all. They just utilize guest designers. And that is, I do those all the time for different companies all the time. And honestly, I really like guest designing, because then there's no obligation on my part either, like that I don't have to do X amount of videos, or I don't have to do X amount of projects, which is now what we will talk about. So now you're on the design team. What are the expectations? Well, my friends and fellow crafters, it honestly is, it could be anything. It could be anything. There are some people, some companies that are very much, we want, XYZ from you. We want 3 cards and 1 video a month. We want 1 card and 1 video. We want, you have to participate in every release, every blog hop release. You have to participate in promoting, these new releases. These are the sets that we need you to promote. It varies from every single company. Some of them are very strict and very micromanaged, where they want to be able to tell you, this is the product you're using, this is the way that we want you to use it. I steer clear of those people. That is not my jam. That's not for me. But then there's other ones that are very much like, you tell me what you want to use and you tell me how you want to use it, and I'll just be happy for you to use my product. Those are my people. Those are my people, because my schedule is too crazy. But And then there's some of them have requirements for your photos have to be a certain size. Your videos have to be a certain resolution. There's all kinds of expectations that they can put on a design team member. But then there's also all kinds of compensation. And I've run the gamut with compensation. So sometimes you'll have a company that compensates in product. What does that mean? That means they send you free product and then you use it for whatever your products are. And that's the only compensation that you get. They just send you free stuff and you use it. Then there is other ways that you can be compensated. One of those is affiliates. So not everybody is an affiliate for every single company. Some people only have affiliates for their design team members. Some people have affiliates for their design team members and their guest designers. Some people are very free with their affiliates. It just depends, but that can be a thing. And then the percentage of the affiliates is different. So, you might have one company that's offering 2% and then another company that's offering 10% in the affiliate sales. So you don't really know, and they can change it per person. Or there's another company that I know that they change it per sales. So if you are selling a ton of their stuff, then you get a higher percentage. So there's all these little nuances for the design team. Then there are the design teams that monetarily compensate you, which means they actually pay you cash money. This is not as common as one would think. It's really not. And part of the reason is because there's always a newer designer who's up and coming, who's willing to do it for less. That's the reality. Now, if you own a company, you may get a better product or a better representation of your product from a experienced crafter, but it's going to cost you more to do it. Whereas somebody who is just your regular everyday crafter who's just looking to maybe not make money at it, but maybe they're perfectly happy with being compensated with product. So they're willing to do it where, maybe somebody else who's been doing it for a couple of years is not willing to just be compensated, be product, and they want to be compensated monetarily. The thing that I will tell you is I like I said, I've worked for a lot of design teams. Some I totally loved, some were okay, and some were like, nah, fam, we can't do business together. And that's okay because everybody is different. I will tell you, and this is something that seems like common sense, but I had to have a friend of mine point it out to me. And that is, you have the ability to negotiate. That's the truth. If somebody reaches out to you and is, hey, I'd be interested in you joining our design team, but we don't pay, or I'm interested in reaching out to the design team, if you joining our design team, but I'm only going to send you one product and I want you to make 3 projects. It's perfectly okay to say, well, my going rate is X. So if that's something that you feel like you could meet, I would be happy to continue, further conversation with you. If it's something that you don't feel like you can meet, I completely understand. And I wish you guys the best of luck. I hope you'll think of me in the future. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're uncomfortable with the terms, if you don't like the things that they're asking you to do, or you feel like you're being taken advantage of, and I'm not saying that this is commonplace, but I have seen it happen. You always have the ability to negotiate those terms, so that you are not feeling like you're working for nothing. I remember in the beginning, when I really didn't know any better, I was on I would think I was on 7 design teams at one time. It was insane. It was totally crazy. This is before I had Nathan. I was on so many design teams, and I spent all of my time making projects for my assignments. I didn't even like it anymore. I was like, oh my word, I gotta make another card. This is terrible. Can you even imagine? I got into this hobby because I love it. Why would I be putting myself in a position to make me feel like I dreaded doing this thing that used to bring me so much joy? So I would tell you, don't apply for too many of them. Keep your options open. And remember, if you're always doing work for design teams, then you may not necessarily have any time to play with anything else. And this is why it's super important, going back to my first piece of advice that I gave you, to work for a company that you love. Because then if you love their product and it's something you would buy anyway, when you're making your projects, you're going to do your best work, but you're not going to want to tear your hair out because you're stuck working with stuff that you don't love or enjoy working with. So that's the first portion of the design team, the basics of them, and they're just a little bit of their inner workings. So now we've colored her all up. She's adorable. And I'm just going to add in a few white highlights with my gel pen. I did not outline her, even though I love a bold black outline, because her outline is so, what's the word that I want? I keep thinking fragile, but that's not it. It's so fine. I didn't want to bulk up her look with adding my typical bold black outline. I felt like she was best utilized in the way that she was drawn with that line width. So here I've stamped my sentiment. I feel like it's a little hard to read on camera, but in real life it is not. And it says, "Hang on, I'm coming for you," which I think is super cute, like a little friend, encouragement kind of thing. I added some glimmers to her scooter, and then that's it. That's our whole card. So I hope that you found some things to inspire you in your scene building and utilizing stencils. I also hope that I answered some of your questions about design teams. If you have any further questions, by all means, leave them below in the comments, and I will address them the next time that we talk about it. So thank you guys so much for your time, and I will catch you on the next video. Oh, don't forget about the sale, the 10% sale, linked below. All right, catch you on the next one. Bye.